I would like to now move into our final conversation today with a beloved leader in our community and someone who I consider a dear friend, Father Vazken. I am privileged to present the Community Partner Service Award to Father Vazken at a time when our community is calling out for comfort, guidance, and compassion. Father Vazken has been a part of our Domestic Violence Awareness Month events predating me, and he is always available anytime that I need him, and I could not think of anybody better to honor with this award for all of his work that he is doing to address domestic violence in the Armenian community and the broader community, all the work that he is doing to talk about genocide and the current situation that's happening and impacting his community. He has also traveled to Rwanda to work with those ravaged by genocide. Coupled with his personal experience growing up with genocide survivors, he founded the In His Shoes movement, which challenges victims of horrific tragedies to move forward by extending assistance to others, by walking in their shoes. Father Vazken, thank you for being here. Your voice is so needed during this time when we search for hope during a war against Armenia. This violence has been at the forefront of our community's hearts and minds, and we stand in solidarity with our Armenian brothers and sisters here in Glendale and Artsakh. I want to open our conversation by really creating a space for you to just describe with the people that are here today about what is happening right now.
First of all, thank you, Tara, and I appreciate this recognition, and it also goes to the wonderful people who've been behind me through our church. What's happening today in Artsakh is something that is an ongoing struggle. Today, unfortunately, what we hear on April 24th about genocide, that genocide is in the plans. And what happened in 1915 when the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman Turks tried to systematically annihilate the Armenians. Today, they would like to finish it off. And that's just what's the sad part. And the reality of it is that they are overtly claiming this. And the world, like in 1915, the world today is consumed with so much other things. But I don't want to say that it's really a world that's not looking, because the world's always consumed with other stuff. Absolutely. And I do remember having gone to Rwanda and working with them. The Rwandan genocide happened during the time of O.J. Simpson's trial, when the world was consumed with a trial, of domestic violence again. But genocide, of course, is the big picture of domestic violence. So I appreciate you giving me this time to share with the listeners, the watchers, about what's happening in Artsakh.
Absolutely. We also want our community, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, genocide is the bigger issue, right? But with genocide and with war and with violence, we see increase of violence against women with genocides and war, right? And if we're really talking about ending gender-based violence, that means let's not have genocide happen, let's not have war happen, and then we won't see gender-based violence, right? There's this connection. And can you kind of share with us a little bit more about the intersection and gender-based violence, and how that also contributes to the trauma that Armenian diaspora is facing and anybody else?
It's all the same picture about violence, about rape. And I use that word intentionally because when you come down to what are moral absolutes, I think we make cases even for killing, when defense of loved ones, defense of your life. We have a case for killing. We have cases for lying, to stop a worse evil. But when it comes to rape, if you were forced to think about one absolute, a moral evil, rape is the one that you cannot get around. You can't say, well, rape is okay in these cases. Mm-hmm. Rape in the case of women, rape in the case of people, is now amplified in the case of genocide. And it becomes amplified to the point that it turns beyond that person, domestic, namely the house, but to the community, amplified to international proportions. And what happens at that point is it transcends the space, like the house, the domestic, and it goes to the nation and therefore transcends time. And so what you have today, 100 years after a genocide in Armenia, you have people who march and proclaim because we want validation. It's the same story. It's the woman who is raped, who is abused. She wants validation first and foremost, that yes, this did happen. I'm not lying about it. I'm not making up this story. You don't need to listen to the guy who perpetrated this on me. And this is all the Armenians are saying. It's like, hey, check it out. We have absolutely no reason to be sitting in Artsakh and exert ourselves on anyone else. It's just we're sitting ducks, and it's the violence, it's the rape, it's the rape of a people that becomes genocide. And that's where I think the intersection is. It's the same story except amplified. And so to me, my work within the local community has always been there because of what my ancestors have gone through, namely my grandparents who are genocide survivors.
Absolutely. I remember last year you shared a story with us about a woman who was a victim of domestic violence that was an Armenian woman, and how she was looking for help in her community, and it was difficult for her to find that help, but she eventually did find that help. And I know that sometimes when we talk about domestic violence, it impacts every culture is impacted. It's not one culture or one ethnicity, one race or anything like that. That can be impacted by domestic violence. But what we know when we have worked really hard at our organization to make sure we have a space for Armenian victims of domestic violence, making sure that we have staff that speak the language. And I think that's critical, important to doing the work, is that you have people that reflect the community that you're serving. And during this time, it's been really challenging for them because they are here getting support groups, living in our shelter, dealing with domestic violence, but also dealing with the pain and the grief about what is happening and the violence that's happening to their family in Armenia. What can you say to those women who are just trying to figure out how to survive the next day, but there's this massive other conflict that's going on?
Yeah, first let me just say what the Y does over there is beyond belief, and your attention specifically to the community. Outside of Armenia, you're sitting in one of the largest concentration of Armenians in the diaspora. And so it's a unique position that the Y has. And I've watched, as you said, I've been involved with it for years, but what you brought to the Y, the ability to take in, to give a community a shelter, is something that we need to focus in on the conversation about war as well. We need a place to be accepted. In other words, Armenia is such a small little place. I mean, there's more people on LA freeways on an average day than there are Armenians in the whole world. Most people would be hard pressed to find Armenia on a map, let alone a place called Artsakh. And that's exactly the same story of a woman who is being abused. Nobody cares. Nobody really wants to get involved. It's easier to turn your head. And so what I really have to say to people is don't give up. It's the hope that you've been talking about. So these women, the workers who are concentrating, and we all are, we're day and night, we're thinking about what's going on in Artsakh. The glimmer is that little hope. And if we didn't have that hope, as we heard a few minutes ago, from the keynote, from everywhere, it comes down to that hope. So I think you just made this beautiful choice in focusing in on hope this year, because I think that's the message we all need to hear. And it's a message that we talk to everyone about, is just have hope. It's going to get better. It has to. Nothing gets worse than this. It doesn't.
So with that being said, I have two last questions. How can non-Armenians best support the Armenian community right now?
Non-Armenians can support it by forgetting about that descriptor. We all have to, we need a world where we start understanding each other's pain. And I think you have it on your Facebook page. You're an Armenian today. Yes, you've always been an Armenian. We need to get beyond these labels on everybody. I'm an Armenian by ancestry. I'm an American here.
Absolutely.
And being an American, my rights are being abused. We have to understand that our only hope in this world is the dream that we have, the dream that we are all brothers and sisters. That's the hope. If we're going to have a hope for tomorrow, it's to get rid of the things. Sure, pride is important. You have your culture, you bring it, but the pride becomes an ugly thing when that pride says, hey, I'm better than you are. And that's what we're seeing. So I think the first thing we need to do is get rid of the descriptors and say that we're all Armenian, we're all American, we're all Black, we're all Mexican. In other words, we're all people. We got a belly button. And if you don't have a belly button, that's a problem. That's from another spaceship or something. But yeah, I think that's the thing that I would tell everybody, because what we need really mostly is, yes, we need money, we need supplies, and people have been so generous, but we really need people to pray. And by praying, it doesn't mean you go down on your knees, it doesn't mean you connect to any specific thing, except to understand that if there is a higher force, a God, it's within you. And you have that power. You have that ability. It's the same thing what we tell domestic violence victims. It's the same thing we tell our people. It's like we have to allow that God to shine, that energy that's inside of you, whatever you want to call it. And so that's what I ask from everybody, is to pray for Armenia, pray for Artsakh. And if you do, then automatically you start letting loose of the money. You automatically start letting loose of everything else that you need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I really appreciated that that remark regarding just getting rid of those descriptors. And we are all Armenian today and tomorrow. We are all American. We are all Black. We are all Latinx. We are all Asian. We are all humans. And I think that's a beautiful message. It inspires me as I move forward in the work that we're doing in the community. But the last question I have to ask you is, just tell me what gives you hope for a better tomorrow.
It's hard. It's hard. Sometimes it's really difficult. And that I think we need to be honest. There is no magic. But what gives me hope is the little stories, to see you and what you're doing at the Y, to see others who you should see coming down to the diocese. Tomorrow we're having a 3-day fasting. Tomorrow night we're having a vigil till midnight. When you see the number of people who are coming out, bringing their children, they're filling up boxes with materials that we're sending, the donations. It gives me hope that, yeah, whatever they tell you outside, there is the good that we need to focus in on. I'll leave you with a story that I think maybe it has to do with domestic violence. A few years ago, a very famous hip hop artist was sentenced by the judge to community service, and he came and he worked at our church for community service. And I said, what can you do for me? I don't want you just sweeping up and everything. And he said, I can't sing because that's my voice. He says, but I could draw. And so I gave him a canvas and some paint, and he drew this beautiful painting, which just is just a lot of noise in it. It's this giant ugly monster and everything. And at the bottom, there's this little red dot. And I asked him, I said, what is that red dot? And he says, even monsters have hearts. And it just brought home the thing that, yes, this guy has messed up his family. He's trying to but there is a heart inside of there. And it's up to us to find that heart. Really, it's difficult. It's difficult. I think Dr. King said it so beautifully. I'm glad Jesus said, love your enemies and not like them, because it's hard for me to like somebody who's hurting me. But that love is what has to be a little bit higher. And I think that's what keeps me going, is trying to find that love inside of everybody.
Thank you so much, Father Vazken. Your inspirational words of comfort and hope. We are so honored and so grateful for everything you do. And thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We hope that everybody out there was able to learn more about the work that is being done to end gender-based violence in our community and throughout this entire country and world. It was truly an amazing program. I feel completely honored and privileged to be a part of this program. I want to thank Heather Masterson, who's doing all this work behind the scenes, and Celeste Mesa for doing work behind the scenes as well. We encourage you all to stay connected. Thank you for your donations. We see them there. We are $420 away from our goal. I want people to know that every $140 donates is we're able to provide an additional bed night to women and children in our shelter. Our funding allows us to pay for 45 nights. On average, women and children are staying up to 62 nights in our shelter. So every $140 helps us provide those additional nights. So thank you for your donations. If you need more information, you can visit our website. Thank you again to the City of Glendale and the Commission of Status of Women, to all of our sponsors who were here today, that were here supporting us and watching us virtually, and to all of you for becoming a part of our beloved community, a community that holds the possibility of hope. Be safe, be well, and we hope to see you all soon.